Hello dear listener, please subscribe to our channel. Enjoy watching. Detective Sarah Mitchell had seen it all in her 10 years on the force, but the case of Victoria Hayes was one that would haunt her for years to come. The unraveling of a twisted tale of love, greed, and betrayal began on a rainy Tuesday morning. James Calloway, a man of striking charm but dubious character, married Victoria Hayes shortly after her father's sudden and mysterious death. James's intentions were far from honorable. He saw Victoria as his ticket to a life of luxury, her inherited fortune a glittering prize. Victoria, deeply grieving her father's demise, found solace in James's seemingly comforting presence. Little did she know, she was a pawn in his grand scheme. Victoria's godfather, Samuel West, an astute businessman and her father's closest confidant, had always been wary of James. He insisted on a prenuptial agreement to protect Victoria's inheritance. This agreement would ensure that James had limited access to her assets, a safeguard Samuel hoped would protect Victoria from potential harm. Months turned into years, and Victoria's health began to deteriorate. Diagnosed with terminal cancer, she faced her mortality with a strength that belied her fragile appearance. As her condition worsened, she confided in Samuel and Jacob, her childhood friend and confidant, about a secret she had harbored for years. She had a son, Michael, from a previous relationship with Jacob. Victoria made it clear in her will that her entire estate would go to Michael, under the guardianship of Jacob and Samuel. She trusted them implicitly to care for her son and protect him from any harm James might attempt. This revelation set the stage for a battle that would test the limits of loyalty and justice. Victoria passed away peacefully, her final wishes known only to a select few. James, however, had his own plans. Furious at being cut off from the fortune he believed was his by right, he plotted to kidnap Michael and hold him for ransom. His anger and desperation grew with each passing day, culminating in a dark plan that would shatter the fragile peace Victoria had hoped to leave behind. Detective Mitchell was assigned to the case when whispers of James's intentions reached the police. She began her investigation, piecing together the puzzle of Victoria's life and the shadowy figure of James Calloway. Her inquiries led her to Jacob and Samuel, who provided crucial information about James's character and Victoria's final wishes. One fateful night, James put his plan into action. He broke into Jacob's home, intent on taking Michael. The house was dark, the only sounds the soft rustle of the wind and the distant hum of traffic. James moved stealthily, his heart pounding with anticipation. He crept into Michael's room, a sinister smile playing on his lips. But Detective Mitchell was one step ahead. She had anticipated James's move and had Jacob and Michael placed under police protection. As James reached out to grab Michael, the room was flooded with light, and armed officers surrounded him. James's face twisted in rage and shock as he was handcuffed and led away. The arrest was a turning point. The trial that followed was swift, the evidence against James overwhelming. He was sentenced to a lengthy prison term, his dreams of wealth and revenge shattered. Detective Mitchell's meticulous work had not only prevented a tragedy but had also brought a measure of justice for Victoria and her family. With James behind bars, Michael was safe to grow up under the loving care of Jacob and Samuel. The shadow of greed and betrayal that had loomed over Victoria's family was lifted, replaced by a sense of peace and hope for the future. Detective Mitchell closed the file on Victoria Hayes, satisfied that she had honored the memory of a woman who had endured so much. As she walked out of the precinct, the rain had stopped, and a sliver of sunlight broke through the clouds, symbolizing a new beginning for Victoria's family and a job well done for the dedicated detective. Victoria's legacy lived on through Michael, a symbol of her strength and resilience. And as for Detective Sarah Mitchell, she knew this was one case that had made a difference, a reminder of why she had chosen to wear the badge in the first place. Detective Sarah Mitchell thought the case of Victoria Hayes was closed, but some shadows linger longer than expected. A year after James Calloway's imprisonment, Sarah received an unexpected visitor at her office. Samuel West, Victoria's godfather. Detective Mitchell, Samuel began, his voice trembling slightly. I think someone is trying to finish what James started. Sarah's eyes narrowed. What makes you think that? Strange things have been happening, Samuel replied. I've noticed cars following us, and there have been attempts to break into Jacob's house. It's as if someone is watching our every move. Sarah immediately felt a familiar pang of concern. Michael was still a young boy, and any threat to his safety was unacceptable. I'll look into it, she promised. Sarah's investigation began with a thorough review of James's connections. James had no close family, but he had associates from his murky past, individuals who might have a vendetta against Victoria's family. Her inquiries led her to a name that kept popping up. Richard Calloway, James's estranged brother, a man with a reputation as unsavory as James's. Richard had recently been released from prison and had disappeared from the radar. Sarah suspected he might be behind the recent threats, seeking revenge for his brother's downfall. One night, as Sarah pored over case files in her dimly lit office, her phone rang. It was Jacob. "Sarah, someone's outside the house," he whispered, his voice tense. "I think it's Richard." "Stay calm, Jacob. Keep Michael safe." "I'm on my way," Sarah said, grabbing her coat and rushing out. Arriving at Jacob's house, Sarah saw a shadowy figure lurking near the garage. She approached silently, her hand on her gun. "Richard Calloway, this is the police." "Step out where I can see you," she commanded. The figure froze, then bolted. Sarah gave chase, her footsteps echoing in the quiet night. Richard was fast, but Sarah was determined. She cornered him in an alley, where he stood panting, a wild look in his eyes. "Why are you doing this, Richard?" Sarah demanded. Richard sneered. "You ruined my brother's life. Now I'm going to ruin yours." "Your brother ruined his own life," Sarah shot back. "And you won't hurt this family. It's over." Richard lunged at her, but Sarah was ready. With a swift move, she subdued him, cuffing his hands behind his back. "You're going back to prison, Richard," she said, leading him away. With Richard in custody, Sarah felt a sense of relief. But she knew the ripples of Victoria's life and death would continue to affect those around her. Back at the station, Sarah interrogated Richard. "What were you planning?" she asked. Richard glared at her. "You think you can protect them forever? There are others who want what they can't have." Sarah's mind raced. Others? The threat was larger than she had anticipated. She needed to ensure that every angle was covered to keep Michael and his guardian safe. She decided to delve deeper into James's past, uncovering a network of shady deals and dubious characters. Among them was Evelyn Moore, a ruthless businesswoman who had once been romantically involved with James and had a vested interest in Victoria's estate. Sarah arranged a meeting with Evelyn under the guise of an informal conversation. Evelyn was poised and cold, her eyes calculating as she listened to Sarah's probing questions. "Detective, I don't know what you're implying," Evelyn said icily. "I have no interest in this child's inheritance." "But you had an interest in James," Sarah replied. "And now he's in prison, thanks to Victoria and her family." Evelyn's facade cracked for a brief moment. "James was a fool. He underestimated me, just as you're doing now." Sarah leaned in. "Evelyn, if you continue down this path, you'll end up just like him. Walk away while you still can." Evelyn's eyes hardened. "This isn't over, detective." As Sarah left, she knew she had only bought some time. Evelyn was dangerous, and her resources were vast. Sarah intensified the protection around Jacob and Michael, ensuring they were never alone and always aware of their surroundings. Months passed, and Evelyn's threats seemed to fade into the background. But Sarah remained vigilant. One evening, she received a call from Samuel. "Sarah, there's something you need to see." She arrived at Samuel's office to find him holding a letter. It was from Victoria, written shortly before her death. "I found this hidden in her belongings," Samuel explained. She feared this might happen. The letter detailed Victoria's fears about James and his associates, hinting at a hidden trust fund set aside for Michael's protection, accessible only under specific conditions. With this new information, Sarah worked with Samuel and Jacob to secure the trust, ensuring Michael's future was safeguarded. They also set up a secure location where Michael could live without constant fear. Evelyn Moore, realizing her plans were thwarted, eventually disappeared from the scene. Whether she had truly given up or was biding her time, Sarah couldn't be sure. But for now, the family was safe. Detective Sarah Mitchell had once again ensured that justice prevailed. As she watched Michael play in the yard, under the watchful eyes of Jacob and Samuel, she felt a sense of accomplishment. The shadows of the past might linger, but the future was bright. And for Victoria's family, the nightmare was finally over. If you leave a comment, tell us what you think about the story you heard. It's important to us and will help us find and tell stories that you find interesting. Thank you for watching us.